Thanks, Jasper, and thanks for bringing the right energy. It has been a marathon and a sprint wrapped together, so kudos to all of you who made it here this morning at this not so rock and roll hour. It's been a good event, and if, like me, I'm sure you've experienced all the themes that have been flowing from the conversations this week, and high among them have been artificial intelligence and globalization and, of course, doing business across APAC in a digital world. But for the team at Believe, these aren't just concepts, they're action points. Believe is the biggest independent in the region. Business is growing, business is exciting, revenues are up, there's a lot more to come. So without further ado, we're going to kick on. And there is a slightly different format for today because I believe we have Denis on the line, as Jasper mentioned earlier. We have something of an exclusive here, which as a journalist I'm always very excited about. So do we have Denis? Hello. Greetings, sir. Hey. Greetings from Singapore.
Hey, greetings from New York. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Perfect.
There are many smiling faces in the room, and I can see a table of believers too.
It seems like you guys have been having all the fun.
We're having fun. I believe you have a conversation, a presentation on the responsible deployment of artificial intelligence. I'll let you take the floor.
Well, sure. I think it's, artificial. I've spent the past couple of days meeting with a lot of our global music partners who are all, have been plowing through the summer on building artificial intelligence products, and we've been at the core of these conversations. And so our view on artificial intelligence is that it's going to come very quickly. We expect some experiments are ongoing now, and we expect some products to be coming to market very soon in the next 3 to 6 months. And it needs to be handled with a great sense of responsibility. It's very new. There's a lot of questions around replacing humans. How is it benefit from the music industry? So the first thing we did, and this is something that we collaborated on a lot with YouTube especially, was we all thought, hey, let's write the principles that are going to drive how we approach AI, and so that AI can be approached responsibly, so that we don't go back to the conflict of the early 2000s between distribution and content producers. So that's a lot of what we've been doing, and Believe we build our principles around AI around 4 principles: consent, control, compensation, and transparency. Consent, we think that every single artist should actually consent to any use of their music or their voice or their personality into AI, that they should control the output when that output can be reasonably associated and directly associated to them. If I use machine learning to replicate someone's voice, then that person has to have control over the output. Compensation, obviously, we think AI is going to create a revenue opportunity for the music industry. So as for music streaming, the compensation that's associated with a value creation has to be proportionate. And then finally, transparency, which is how do we make sure from a user standpoint, but as well as from an artist standpoint, we're very clear to people about what they're listening to. Is this human creation, or is this the result of an artificial intelligence? So we think these principles that we use to review every single discussions that and assess every single discussion that we're having now will allow us to have an approach that's very responsible and then participate in controlling the deployment of AI very strongly.
Thank you. So as part of, we're having this conversation now, and I assume you've been having it for some time with your clients and labels and partners. You mentioned being involved on both sides of that conversation. You have just in Asia alone, APAC, 10,000 artists and label partners. So you must communicate with each and every one of those. That must be a challenge.
Yes, I think there's there's a lot of, I would say, work that we need to do to really explain generative AI, what are the benefits, what are the risks, how we are working to control it. I would say we are at the very beginning of a process, and we're actually going to, in the coming week, initiate an outreach to a lot of our clients, telling them, hey, from the conversations that we've had in the market so far, these are the type of experiments that we expect to come in the market. Machine learning, the experiments around voice, as we've done with Grimes, for example, and spend a lot of time around preparing for the future and the deployment. A lot of AI experiments, when you do machine learning and when you want to replicate someone's voice, these are not the same rights as recording rights. These are, in Europe, these are personality rights. In some states in the US, these are publicity rights that are not part of recording contracts. So we need to have a conversation with our artists, with our labels. Hey, if you want to lean forward, if you want to participate in some of these experiments, which we think will be great to enhance artist creation, then we need to be able to secure a new set of rights. And so we need to explain for what they're going to be used and prepare all of these experiments. So yes, we expect a lot of very intense dialogue in the next very quickly in the next couple of weeks, and probably in the next 3 to 6 months. But quite frankly, we expect adoption to be relatively very rapid in terms of explanation, given the benefits that we anticipate.
So the words experiment and artificial intelligence used in the same sentence would strike the fear in the hearts of some people. Have you felt resistance to machine learning and deploying it?
No, I think if you approach it right, it's very interesting because we did a survey, AI in music, of 1,600 of our artists and labels from TuneCore. And we asked them all these questions. Have you used artificial intelligence? What's your approach? Do you see it as an opportunity? Do you see it as a threat? What was very interesting is that 50% of the artists had experience, were aware, and had experience with artificial intelligence in one form or another. 40% were not aware of it. So given the fact where we are in the adoption curve, 50% is a very high number already. And then you had a big difference. When you ask the 50% who had experimented with AI and Gen AI, and most of them used AI or Gen AI in their creative process, the global perception was very positive. Yes, I've used this, and this is actually great to help me in my creative process, and very, very positive. For the 40% that were not aware, the fear was stronger there. So, which makes me think that when people who have used the technology have a positive experience with the technology, that once more people get engaged, we will have an adoption that will be relatively quickly. And the last element in the survey we did that was interesting, it was really essentially the key takeaway was we asked questions such as, hey, would you be willing for your voice to be used? Would you be willing for your music to be used in machine learning? 50% of the artists told us, yes, I would love to, very happy for my music to be used for machine learning. 30% told us, yes, same thing for my voice. But in those cases, of course, I want to be compensated and I want to have control. And how we've developed some of these principles upon what we thought was important to artists in order to have a deployment. We need to build trust at the outset very early on, because if we need to build trust and that goes through control, then that is going to facilitate the deployment.
There is a clear segue from those comments on Grimes and her project with Elf Tech, in which she encouraged users of the platform to take a recording of her voice and experiment with it and release it through the platform and generate money. What did you think of that project, and were there any lessons to learn from it?
Oh, Plenty of lessons, which was great, which was one of the very early experiments with Grimes and with health tech, her management company and the technology company that powered the machine learning behind her voice. The key learnings were really along the lines of what I described. What happened originally is Grimes came to us and said, "Hey, I'm doing a lot of collaboration with artists. When I do collaboration, I get into studios, I record with them, and usually have a deal where I share into the royalties of that track where my voice is being, I'm loaning my voice to 50-50. Can I use Gen AI to replicate this and actually enlarge?" And so she came in with a consent, which is, "Hey, I would like to do that." Then we had a lot of discussions with her, and we started asking some questions. "Hey, what happens if someone uses VAI to put words in your mouth with your voice that you wouldn't want to, that are detrimental to your work and to your creative work body rather than add to it?" And that led us to, "Hey, we need her to have control over what gets put online and not." And so we've devised a process that allows us to filter all of the submissions as she would for a normal process. Compensation, same thing. We applied the same principles, 50% of a revenue share for using our voice. And same thing, it drove us to the principle of transparency, which is now we're going to have tracks with Grimes' actual voice and then tracks with a generative AI voice. And we need to be clear with the people that these are not the same thing. So this came into solutions as, if you want to listen to the AI songs, then you find them not on Grimes' profile, but you find them on a Grimes AI profile on Spotify, on YouTube, on the various services, to make it very clear to users what this is. So yes, it's been a lot of works, and that's allowed us as well, by deriving to some of these principles. We want to make sure that they are shared and adopted by all of our global partners. So we actually wrote them down and took them to all of our partners, telling them, in the coming months, you're going to be experimenting around AI. This is what is going to be important to us as a company for the artists that we represent. As you're thinking about building these products, you need to integrate that into your thinking. And the feedback we've had from YouTube, from Spotify, from all of the partners we've shared, that has been very positive in helping them guide towards building product that integrated these principles at the core, which we need to do very early on.
Fabulous. And looking at your 4 principles, which I made a note of, the Grimes project it ticks all of them: consent and control and compensation and transparency. So we've learned the principles here. The message is out. What's the next phase? Will there be a campaign to inform all of your clients and all of your members and staff?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. On the generative AI, I think it's what we're going to do actually is explain some of the elements. Hey, what is learning? Right now, a lot of our partners are coming to us and telling us, hey, the first thing we need to do is we need to be able to do machine learning, because we know AI, we know Gen AI can empower us to do a lot of things. It can empower us to improve algorithm-based recommendation on our platform. It can help us improve how the music that is being used to illustrate videos from our users. So it's essentially centered around, how does Gen AI help further empower music? And I think it's one thing to talk about it theoretically. Hey, there's machine learning, and then there's specific use cases in Illustrate. So what we will try to do in the coming month is the following: is explain to everyone what we're seeing in the market now, which is essentially very early R&D experiments very large global tech companies coming to us, telling us we need the machine to learn and we need the machine to have content, to have music in order to be able to learn and be good. And then we're going to start testing some products, pure R&D. These products are not going to be taken to large audiences. They're going to be exposed to very small audiences. And some of them are going to work. Some of them are not going to work. So that's what we'll need to explain. And then go after that with very specific experiments that are ready to go at larger scale with probably much more demonstration of the capabilities that these technologies have.
So that is our exclusive. Thank you, Denis. Gen AI, it's clearly the digital genie. It's out of the bottle. You can't put it back in there. It's the future and it's here already. But with that, I'd like to pivot and I'd like to take us back 10 years and the origins of Believe's activities in APAC. And Sylvain, let's have a little chat about that. I had the good fortune of spending some time with both of you and some of your colleagues who are in the room earlier this year to celebrate the APAC business, which has come a long way in those years. So let's cast our minds back to Indonesia, Sylvain, and how it all began.
Sure, thank you. I think what's very interesting, today we're talking about AI, which is probably going to define what the music business looks like, or at least have a very big influence on what the business is going to look like in the next 10 years. 10 years ago, when we came in here, streaming didn't even exist, or it only really began to start to exist. And so when we came here very early in 2013, the idea was to bring to the market knowledge about technologies, about usage, music consumption that didn't really exist, sometimes bringing even very simple concepts such as copyright to local artist community, explain what it was all about, and trying to foster and to help the local ecosystem to grow and to take a significant portion of the music listenership. Because when you, even 10 years ago, that is really funny, because when you were riding on a cab or taxi, whether it's in the streets of Manila, in the streets of Jakarta, the streets of Bangkok, you listen to the music that the people were listening to. It was not international music; it was local music. It was not just reflected in the consumption in the digital world. And so we knew that there was a very, very strong local scene that was not really represented on the platforms. And so we essentially started building up the teams with local experts, starting to deep dive into the local catalogs, reached out to rights holder, digitizing content, sometimes very manually, and then uploading it on platforms at the beginning on iTunes, because that's what we begin with, and then progressively towards other streaming platforms when YouTube came in, when Spotify came in, and then we've seen the growth that we've experienced over the last 10 years.
I can't help but feel, well, timing is everything in this weird and wonderful industry of ours. If Believe had set up 5 years earlier, as you mentioned, there was no streaming world, but it came pretty quickly. The timing was right. If you'd have come 5 years too early, it was too early. If you came 5 years later, then you would have been competing for a small foothold with a number of other players. So the timing was, I would say, almost immaculate.
Yeah, absolutely. Timing is always key, and the timing was right because those are the times. 2013 is the time where iTunes and Apple started deploying iTunes across the globe. So we knew that it was the timing where there would be needed for a very efficient and standardized process to digitize content, because the digital world existed to some extent through telcos. For a lot of people that I'm sure here in this room are very familiar with the concept of ringback tones, which was a huge industry going for decades, but it was just not a standardized model. It was essentially serving top artists or like top 10, top 20 artists, and that was it. It was not creating really value down the so-called long tail, and so not really bringing back to the local industry. And then iTunes started to bring that value to some extent, and then YouTube really accelerated that trend. And in some markets when we came in, YouTube wasn't even monetized. When we started in Thailand, we started distributing content, optimizing YouTube channels, although there was no monetization happening on music on YouTube then, because the local publishing association was not set up properly. So it was really, I wouldn't say the dark age, but it was the very, very early stage of the digital space for music.
So with that global approach, local vision, you built this regional business. It would help to know sort of the scale of the business as it is right now.
Right. So today, first of all, I think we need to understand, and maybe for a lot of Westerners, they don't always understand what's the scale of Asia. Asia is simply huge. We're talking about half the population world. We're talking about very, very diverse ecosystem, many different languages, long history going centuries and centuries, very strong local culture, beliefs. So it's a very, very strong and diverse ecosystem. So first of all, we had to adapt to that ecosystem. So which means that you cannot come into a market and think that, okay, what I'm doing here is going to fit there, or I need to understand what's going on. So the first step was to hire people that knew about that. So in every single country, now we have around 480 people across Asia Pacific, and those 480 people, except for me and maybe Antoine who's in the room, we are the only two foreigners. Everybody else are local people, and we really, really care a lot about this, because this is how you educate yourself about the market that you evolve in. You cannot pretend to go into a market bringing knowledge without having learned first. So I would say that's the approach. And then the second objective was, okay, how do we bring back value to the local ecosystem? Because for decades, international artists, like international top superstars, have been pretty much capturing the value that was generating on platforms, because when you look at even at marketing teams built up in big international companies, they're entirely dedicated in promoting international artists, not local artists. So we did the exact opposite. We went in, and our teams are 100% dedicated to develop and build up local scene so that we can bring back the value domestically, where we think it belongs to domestic artists, domestic labels. And so over the last 10 years, we've paid back over 700 million euros to the industry across the various businesses. So whether it's through TuneCore, whether it's through our distribution program, through our artist services program. And that's value that has been fueling the development of new artists, that fueling the development of new labels, that have been building the next generation of artists, the next generation of labels, so that now we're seeing very strongly the increase of the market share of domestic music into the digital space, which is exactly what it should be.
And of course, you've reinvested in the business along the way. That's part of the cornerstone of your MO.
Exactly. It's a virtual circle. So as you fuel the local music ecosystem, as I was saying, it creates new opportunities for artists that would not have tried becoming professional artists, but as you create an ecosystem, as you increase the size of the market opportunity for them, then it becomes sustainable. So you see new labels emerging, you see new artists that are taking their career into their hands, and they're actually leveraging what the digital opportunities. And so that's the first stage. The next stage maybe for the future is, how does Asian music conquer the world? If I wanted to be having like a grand objective, but we do think that Asian music down the road will have a massive effect of what the music industry, the music production landscape is going to look like in the next 10 years.
Well, we can think big. Why not? If we had more time, which we don't, we only have roughly 5 minutes, we could discuss some market studies. There are so many fascinating little pieces of that jigsaw puzzle. In Australia, for instance, Believe APAC won 2 awards at the Air Awards recently. Isn't that right, Maria? I believe in Japan, the world's number 2 recorded music market, Believe has a market share in digital of They're number 3, ahead of Warner Music, which is a staggering number. In short time, are you able to tell us how you got that cut through in Japan?
Okay, so in Japan, we've done that in a very close partnership with the TuneCore Japan team, who really give them all the credit for that success. They've really been building the business from the ground up, pretty much simultaneously as the Believe team was doing in other markets. And what they've done is what we've done everywhere else. They've been focusing on the local music industry, the local ecosystem, the local music genres that were very, very digital, offering services that no one was offering to anybody before. And that has contributed in creating an ecosystem, creating an environment where local music would really grow and being self-served and grow further. And of course, we intend to build on that success further on.
Alliances and partnerships, joint ventures, acquisitions, these are all important to the growth of the business. What do you look for in a partner?
So, organic growth and external growth have always been at the core of our growth strategy. But we're not in a race to acquire. Our goal is not to acquire blindly market share at completely crazy prices. What we're looking at is we want to find like-minded people. I think that's the most important. We want to find people that think the same way, that share the same value as we do. So again, local first, share the value of transparencies, of fairness, of expertise. Those are the value that we hold really, really dear, and we want people that understand those value and that will be able to build side by side with us and contribute in the same way that we want. So we're very picky with the partners that we want to work with. And I think the primary quality we look for is shared values, shared mission towards the same goal.
What have been the greatest challenges so far?
I would say the greatest challenges continues to be education, I would say. We are, again, in markets, so Asia is very exciting from many levels because it's an industry, and there's a mindset where people are very eager to grasp every single opportunities that comes to them, and so we don't see the long debates that exist in Europe. I mean, 10 years ago there was the value gap, this discussion happening around YouTube. We never had that debate here. There was discussion in the West recently about how much TikTok should be contributing to the music industry. Here, we don't have that debate here. People just are seeing opportunities. They say, okay, there's a new way of consuming music. How do I leverage that to reach out to my audiences, to build up new artists, to build up my business? And so we'll figure out those questions later. Let's just learn on what's going on. So, and at the same time, some very basic concepts such as planning for a release are not always very well understood. So it feels like Asia is always in a rush, to grab things, to grab opportunities. And so we're always trying to find the right balance between planning, strategizing, having very tight and organized execution, whilst at the same time seizing the opportunities before they lapse.
Sadly, we're in a rush too, because we have 1 minute left. I prepared questions so we could speak all day. What finally does the next 10 years look like for Believe?
So hopefully the next 10 years what will look like, at least for the local music industry, has what it's been looking like last year, which means further development, further maturation, if I would say, of the local music industry, the local ecosystem, and I would say maybe something new, which is how does Asia music, singers, songwriters, diversity, influences the way people consume music globally. I think K-pop gave us a sense of how a local phenomenon can actually impact even the way people look at producing music outside of Asia, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot more examples of that in the future. So we're definitely going to look at how to make Asian music a more global music.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lars.